I'm aware of your work, of course, all of this great work you've done over the years in the area of cryptozoology. But what a lot of people probably don't know is what what is your story? What drew you toward cryptozoology? How did you get involved?
Um, Sorry, you can repeat again?
Yes, yes. What was it that attracted you toward cryptozoology? Why did you
Oh,
become
yes.
interested?
Well, um, I have been always interested in the animal kingdom. Okay. When I was a schoolboy, I was reading books about animals, about animal kingdom. Okay. And also, I was interested in, uh, well, scientific mysteries, I would say.
Mhm.
And when I was a student, uh, I read Bernard Wervelman's books
Mhm.
and articles, and I was very interested in them because this zoologist, because Wervelmans was a zoologist,
Mhm.
uh, in my opinion, it seemed to ally the scientific method, the scientific rigor,
Mhm.
and an open mind to uh, zoological mysteries. And that was very important for me, the both sides of the
Mhm.
scientific research, of this kind of research in cryptozoology. Uh, so I contacted Heuvelmans uh, by mail, not email at this time. it
Yeah.
was it was in 1976,
Okay. Okay.
1976, and Heuvelmans encouraged this term,
Correct.
to make personal research on various cryptozoological files.
Mhm.
Well, and in fact, I was more interested in ill-known cryptozoological cases
Mhm.
rather than um, the stars of cryptozoology.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, this is very interesting. I have many books on the Loch Ness monster, the
Mhm.
Red Sea serpent, Bigfoot, and so on. But my personal research, uh, I did it on very, very ill-known cryptids,
Mhm.
even to cryptozoologists. For instance, I can give you some examples.
That would be great.
Um, well, I have, and of course, I have published a lot of articles,
Mhm.
both in popular and peer-reviewed journals.
Mhm.
Uh, well, and among these rather obscure cryptids about which I made personal research and above on which I published articles,
Mhm.
I can mention the a flightless bird unknown to science in the Marquesas Islands,
Oh wow.
uh, a small bear in northern Africa, the Atlas bear,
Mm.
uh, which is more well known to cryptozoologists and even zoologists. The late survival of the gray whale in the Atlantic Ocean,
Mhm.
the forest rhinoceros in Central Africa,
Mm.
uh, Charles Darwin's predicted moth in Madagascar,
Yes.
etc. Well, why these cryptids and not the stars of cryptozoology? Uh, in fact, because two reasons. Uh, The first one is that I was interested in the cases where I could find quite new information, quite new data. Because, of course, nobody or very few people had worked on these cases, on these files. And the second reason is that because most of them are rather small animals, well, a moth, which is not
not too big. Yes.
Of, 10 centimeters, 4 inches. The flightless, the wingless bird of Ivaoa in the Marquesas Island, which is like a hen or like a duck. Not a very big bird. It's not the thunderbird, etc. And these rather small animals, I had more. It seemed to me that it was more easy to prove their existence and to see their existence accepted by the consensus of zoologists, rather than Bigfoot, the great sea serpent, and all the stars of cryptozoology, even Mokele-mbembe, etc. I've seen that many zoologists agree with my articles. I have been able to publish scientific papers in scholarly journals like Aquatic Mammals, La Recherche en France, Espèces, that is to say species, a quarterly magazine of natural history in France, and so on. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that's a very, very deep and exhaustive list of some great animals. And I've read many of your articles over the years, and it interests me, that focus that you have on the smaller, less recognized species of cryptid. And what I'd like to know is, why do you think the people in cryptozoology, they tend to focus always on Nessie or Bigfoot instead of some of these small species like an unknown frog or moth or something like that? Why do we only like the rock stars and not the small, easy to prove in one way species of cryptid?
I think there is a psychological reason, as the stars of cryptozoology strike our mind more than these obscure small cryptids, because they are very large or very large, because they, for the hominids, of course, they are in relation with our own species, because we are primates, of course.
Yes.
Because there is a link with our origin for the hominids, unknown hominids, because they are related with some mythical creatures, like the dragon for the Mokele-mbembe, or the great sea serpent, or even Nessie in Loch Ness, because they are related with other mythical creatures, like the wild man, of course. That doesn't mean that they do not exist. An animal may, of course, strike our imagination, being much mythified, not mystified, but
mythified. I like that. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Mythified is very difficult to say.
I'm going to take that. That's a great word, mythified.
For instance, the myth of the wild man, which is a stereotype. The wild man, from the satyrs of the antiquity to the modern Yeti of the Himalayas, has always, in all times and all the world, described as hairy, of course, fond of wine. The satyrs of the antiquity were fond of wine, and today the Yeti is believed to be caught when the Sherpa, the mountaineers of Nepal, put a drink out of their home, and the Yeti comes, drinks the wine. Of course, he becomes completely crazy, and you can capture, you can catch it.
Yeah.
Well, and third feature of the wild man, of the mythological wild man, he is fond of women.
Yes.
Exactly like the Yeti, but of course you can say, well, the satyrs of the antiquity, it's just imagination. The Yeti, why not? It's just a myth. It is imagination.
Yes.
But the same myth, the same features I was analyzing were reported also for the gorilla. The gorilla, very hairy, human-like, fond of wine and or alcohol, and catching the black women to make children with them.
Wow.
Of course, all that is wrong, but the animal itself is real. And in fact, when a Western investigator asked a Sherpa in Nepal in the 1950s, all what you are saying to me is mythical. Is the Sherpa a myth? And he replied very judiciously, does a myth make prints in the snow, footprints in the snow? So you have the tendency. What is the job, the work of the cryptozoologist? It is to separate what is mythical, imaginary, and often very stereotyped from what is possibly real. When biological, zoological, behavioral, ecological details are given by the witnesses, it is quite different from the mythical tradition. Okay, so the job of the critical cryptozoologist, and I think I am a critical cryptozoologist, is to separate these two aspects of the sightings. Because, of course, in the sighting itself, in the report of the witness itself, he is there is a tendency of the witness to fill the lack of information because his observation has not been perfect. There are some zones of some lacks, some lack of in the witness.
Okay? Yes, very much so.
And there is a tendency to fill the holes with the traditional thought, with the mythical thought. Well, this phenomenon is much less at work in the animal of the cryptids, which I have chosen to study. And also, I believe that some of them might be proved to exist much more rapidly than Bigfoot, Yeti, and so on.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
This was the case. This actually occurred. For instance, my first cryptozoological article about this flightless bird from the Marquesas Island, I published it more than 40 years ago. Well, it was in 1981, yes, in a scientific magazine, in a scientific journal, peer-reviewed journal. Well, I had only sightings, testimonial evidence, but my conclusion from a few reports, a few sightings, was that it was a rail, a rail, a flightless rail, as many rail species are living in Pacific islands. So it was not very extraordinary that one more species was still living in the Marquesas Island, and possibly related to the takahe. The takahe is a New Zealand big rail. That was in 1981, and when I sent my article to several ornithologists, they replied to me, well, your presentation of this file is convincing. Yes, it is probably an unknown rail, but, well, it cannot be related to the New Zealand takahe, the scientific name of which is Porphyrio horteteri. Recall the generic name Porphyrio. Well, it cannot be a Porphyrio because there is a gap in the geographical range of Porphyrio genus, a gap of 3,000, more than 3,000 kilometers between Fiji Island, New Zealand, New Caledonia, and Eastern Polynesia, like the Marquesas Islands. So it may be a rail, an unknown rail, but certainly not belonging to the genus Porphyrio. That was in 1981, as I said. 7 years later, in 1988, bone remains, fossil bone remains, were found in Hivaoa Island, just precisely the island where the witnesses had been recorded.
Wow. Wow.
And this bone, well, I say fossil bones, but not fossil, in fact. Zoologists, archaeologists speak of subfossil remains. That is to say, the bones are not even mineralized. There is still the collagen of the bone, and they are
nearly
only, less than 1,000 years old.
Wow.
About 700 years old, for instance, in Ivawa. And they belong to a new species of Porphyrio, Cocorico, Kikiriki, which has been named Porphyrio paepae. Paepae, the paepae in Polynesia are platforms made of coral or of basalt.
Oh, okay.
Which are used as to the food remains, to get rid of food remains.
I know what you mean.
And or to make also ceremonies.
Like an altar, almost like an altar.
Sorry?
They are like an altar, almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was just that the people, the Polynesian people, said about their mysterious bird that it was eaten by the French colonists, and that it was used also for its feathers by the chiefs in ceremonies. Okay. That was in 1988. In 2000, one of my correspondents wrote to me saying that, do you know that Paul Gauguin is a famous French painter. He was he spent the 3 last years of his life in Tahiti and in Ivaoa. In Ivaoa, just the island we are talking about. So this correspondent, in fact, the president of the Ornithology Club of Tahiti.
Okay.
And he said to me, do you know that the Paul Gauguin painted the bird you were speaking about in your article? No, not at all. And I made some research on internet, and I found the painting made by Paul Gauguin in 1902.
Wow.
A few months before his death in Ivaoa. The painting is called The Sorcerer of Ivaoa.
Wow.
Le sorcier d'Ivaoa in French. The Sorcerer of Ivaoa. And, I cannot share a photograph here.
You might be able to. Let me just see. Yes, if you go to the bottom, it should allow you to share screen. I think everybody has permission. It has a little green arrow facing out.
Yeah. Share the screen, yes. Sorry.
No problems. Can't wait to see it.
Take my...
You must have felt elated, Michel, when you heard that news about Gauguin's painting, that the evidence was there in 1902.
One moment, please.
Okay.
Mes documents. Oiseaux. Birds. Okay.
So this is the Gauguin painting from 1902 that we're going to see.
Yes. This is the you have deactivated the screen share.
Oh, I have. Sorry. Let me just have a look. Okay.
No, I cannot do it. So,
no. Okay. What's it called?
Well,
Paul Gauguin.
Paul Gauguin.
What's the name of the painting? The Sorcerer?
Sorry. Un moment, I want imprime. Print. Okay.
I might have it here. Okay. Okay, and there's a sort of a young lady.
I am printed it, and I will show.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'll try to share it too if I can.
Print.
Okay.
Well, okay. So
is this it?
Paul Gauguin.
Do you see it? This is it.
Okay, you.
And where's the bird? This is the bird, and here to the right.
Yes, this one.
Yeah.
And as you see, there is this bird, blue and green. And you remark that there is a dog which is biting the back of the bird. And in fact, the famous Takare of New Zealand, when he was caught, 3 of the first 4 specimens were caught by dogs running after this flightless bird.
Oh gosh! Okay. So they were sitting ducks. They were easy targets, basically.
Okay.
Well, I think that's an amazing discovery, and especially to get such a discovery from 1902 that you've been searching for. You'd written about it, and you've done all of this research, and then suddenly Gauguin had found it and incidentally painted it over 100 years ago. Can I ask you? I'm wondering from your perspective, what makes an animal a cryptid? So this bird is a type of porphyria. It's unknown, or it's a species that we're not supposed to know about. Is that a cryptid, or is this just an undiscovered subspecies of an already well-known type? I mean, what makes a cryptid? Does it have to be a completely new animal, or can it be just something of a previously unknown variety?
So the question is, what makes an animal a cryptid?
Yes.
Well, Bernard Heuvelmans, who is considered the father of cryptozoology, he made the word cryptozoology in the 1950s. He gave this definition of cryptozoology. I quote: "The scientific study of hidden animals, that is to say, of still unknown animal forms about which testimonial and circumstantial evidence is available, or material evidence considered insufficient by some." So, cryptozoology is not only interested in sightings, testimonial evidence, or in autoptical evidence, that is to say, material evidence such as photographs, footprints, videos, etc. But also, and it is very important and often forgotten, also in circumstantial evidence. And, well, for instance, if you study several sightings, several reports of witnesses, and that these reports are consistent with geology, biology, zoology, ethology, ecology, etc., then the testimonial evidence is becoming circumstantial evidence, not to speak of material evidence, which is, of course, the best one which can be obtained. I would like to give you two examples of animal forms, the existence of which has been inferred from circumstantial evidence only. So there were cryptids at one time, and without any sighting or without any material evidence. The first one is the famous predicted moth. In 1861, Charles Darwin proposed the existence in Madagascar of a moth with a proboscis 10 inches long, 25 centimeters long, from the study of an orchid, a plant, from that island, from Madagascar. Because he remarked that only an insect with such a proboscis could fecundate the orchid Angraecum sesquipedale. Well, that was in 1861. And this theoretical insect, this cryptid insect, if I can say, was actually found in and described as late as 1903.
Wow.
That is to say 42 years later. And it was named Xanthopan. The genus was already known, but with very shorter proboscis in continental Africa. But the species of Madagascar, with its very, very long 25 centimeter, 10 inches long proboscis, was named Xanthopan predicta, that is to say, predicted. That is an important victory of cryptozoology mind, a true cryptozoological mind. But long before the name, the word of cryptozoology was created by Heuvelmans. More recently, much more recently, 1 century later, in 1989, the existence of an unknown South American lizard of the genus Gymnophthalmus was suggested by 4 American scientists from the study from its genetic print, we could say, on the parthenogenetic species Gymnophthalmus underwoodi. Wow. So one parent species was known, and the second parent species was unknown. But these 4 scientists predicted the existence in Venezuela of this lizard, its chromosomes, its serum proteins, etc.
Wow.
And this cryptid species was found 2 years later in 1991, and it was named Gymnophthalmus cryptus. Cryptus, that is to say cryptic. Extraordinary. And well, this time only 2 years, and not 42 like the Madagascar.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
But well, it is very interesting that there are scientific articles of these 4 scientists. You will never see the word cryptozoology. However,
no,
their work is 100% cryptozoological. And also for Darwin in 1861. Well, so I said the main work of cryptozoologists is to transform testimonial evidence, which is of course very weak. There are a lot of errors, of hoaxes, of course, misunderstandings, and so on. So the cryptozoologists have to transform testimonial evidence in circumstantial evidence. And well, that is the case for some files. For instance, in the case of the Bigfoot, some scientists have tried to make a curve of the alleged size of the Bigfoot.
Yes.
From, of course, the witnesses' accounts, and also of the and this time it's not, and also for the footprints, and this time it is not alleged sightings, but actual footprints, photographed or
yeah.
Well, and in both cases, the curve is consistent with the Bergman rule. I don't know if you know the Bergman rule.
What is for everybody watching? Well, what is the Bergman rule?
Which says that northern animal forms are very great, very large, and southern forms are much smaller. It's only a phenomenon for the heat. It is more easy to be small in southern and in hot climates. Okay, then and if you study the curve of the size of the Bigfoot from the witnesses' accounts and of the footprints from the photograph taken, it is the same curve, consistent, as I said, with the Bergman rule. Large individuals in the north, much smaller in the south.
That's very interesting. Do you think that
it was published in Men-like Monsters on Trial? A very it was a conference on human-like hairy humanoids in the 1980s. Well, okay.
Well, no, I'm absolutely. I did have a question for you about that actually, which was in regards to unknown hominid species. Do you think there could be several species? So would these footprints between north and south, this size variation, represent several different species of unknown hominid, or do you think we're looking at one specific genus that has variability of size and I know coloration throughout these different regions?
Well, if these human-like hairy creatures do exist, they are primates, most of them. Now, the primate order in zoology is extremely diversified. Nowadays, we we know more than 400 living species of primates. Okay? More than 400 living species have been described by zoologists, mainly primatologists. And among these more than 400 living species, 25 were described in the years 2000s and 36 in the year 2010s.
Wow.
Okay? And among these new species of primates recently described, several ones were large enough, like, for instance, the Kipunji, Rungwecebus kipunji, and Cercopithecus lumaniensis, both from Africa, Rhinopithecus strikeri in Burma, Southeast Asia. Therefore, it is not impossible that large unknown primates remain to be discovered nowadays. After all, the gorilla has entered zoology as late as 1847, although its existence had been existence, morphology, food, habits, and so on, had been reported by Western travelers in the 17th and the 18th century. And the pygmy chimpanzee, the bonobo, has been described as late as 1929.
Wow.
So why not the Yeti or the orang pendek in the 21st century? It is quite possible. At least it's not impossible from the rate of discovery of new primate species.
Yeah.
Now, is there one or several unknown species of primates? Well, I would say several species, just like other primates. As I said, it's one of the most diversified zoological orders among mammals, as I said previously. Also, second reason, one and the same species cannot possess at the same time a sharp pointed head and a flat head, elongated feet and very broad feet, a human-like big toe and an opposable big toe. That is impossible that it is the same one and the same species. So I would say that, well, several species are involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, however, how can we prove their existence? Of course, we have testimonial evidence, circumstantial evidence and even for some of them, material evidence, although considered insufficient by some. I mean, footprints, photographs, videos, sometimes even excrements, hairs, and so on.
Yeah.
But now the situation may change, may be different in the years to come, because we have new tests which are possible. DNA analysis of hairs, excrements, might give the solution. Well, Brian Sykes made analysis a few years ago of some hairs, alleged hairs of Bigfoot, wild men, and so on, but all of them were from horse, bear, not one from a primate. But well, now when excrements are collected, it is possible to make DNA analysis. And even if you have not a fragment of the animal itself, hair, excrements, and even, of course, a bone fragment. Even if you have not the single piece of the animal itself, it is possible to have evidence of its former presence by a technology which is known as environmental DNA. One of my
very exciting.
One of the finds I am working on is the white oryki of New Zealand. The white oryki, an otter-like animal, an animal.
Okay. The white oryki. Yes, yes, yes.
In New Zealand, looking like an otter.
Yes.
Which is quite crazy, because there is no native mammal terrestrial native mammal in New Zealand. So the existence, the survival of an otter population, of course, brought by sailors a few centuries ago, would be extraordinary. But there is another possibility, even more extraordinary. It might be a monotreme, that is to say, an aquatic mammal related to the platypus of Australia.
Wow.
This animal is reported to live in some lakes and rivers of South Island of New Zealand. We have footprints looking like that of an otter, or also of a platypus, webbed feet, 5 toes, etc. The general shape is that of a small otter, 2 feet long, or of a platypus as well. The animal is said to have a nictitating membrana on a third eyelid, if you want, which is also a feature which you find in otters or in the platypus. It is said to not only to swim but also to dive in the water. It has burrows opening in the riverbank, which have been photographed, etc. So we have a lot of testimonial, circumstantial, and even material evidence, but not the animal itself, of course.
That's fascinating, really fascinating.
Now, with the environmental DNA technology, it is easy to analyze some quantity of water from the rivers or lakes where this animal this cryptid has been reported, and to search for DNA, even if you have not the animal itself, to search for DNA of this cryptid, and to compare them, to compare this DNA with that of monotremes, otters, or the official theory, ferrets, minks,
Okay.
and other pets. Well,
The white is fascinates me. Yeah.
Nictitating membrana.
Yeah.
Of which known as webbed feet, etc. Okay, and of which known is able to dive against the current and to swim against the current. Sorry, and even more unable to dive in the depth of the river or of the lake. And well, okay.
Well, what do you think, Michel? And I've been fascinated by the Waitariki for a little while. I never heard the theory that they were otters brought by sailors. That really does make sense, that the animal isn't originally native to the island, but it was brought hundreds of years ago. But otters are conspicuous animals. Why do you think? What new characteristics or behaviors could this otter, a Waitariki, have developed, if it's an otter, to stay out of sight?
Well, in the 1970s, G.A. Pollock, a solicitor, but he was fond of zoology. He made a lot of field inquiries, and he he registered a lot of witnesses' accounts about the so-called New Zealand otter. Pollock thought that it was a true otter brought by sailors several centuries ago, more precisely Indian or Bengali sailors, because in the prison Bangladesh and in a part of India, a traditional fishing method is to use otters, yes, to catch fishes. So Pollock believed that these sailors, Indian sailors, several centuries ago, reached New Zealand long before Englishmen and long before James Cook, in fact. And some otters escaped and continue to reproduce themselves and to live in New Zealand. Well, that is Pollock's theory. It is true that many details reported by the witnesses, and even the burrow, the footprints photographed, etc., are consistent with the otter theory. But the same features are also consistent with an aquatic monotreme theory. And in fact, there are several witnesses, several accounts which are not consistent with the otter theory. For instance, one of the witnesses said that the fur of the white oriki, he was a seal hunter, okay, for the fur of the seals, and he said he had also killed a white oriki resembling an otter, okay, and he said that he got rid of its fur because it was it had not the quality of the fur of the seal.
Yeah.
Well, if you know the otter fur, it's one of the most precious fur among pelletry. Okay. On the other hand, the fur of the platypus is not very how can I say? It's not very precious. Okay. Second reason. Otters are very discreet animals, very shy, and it is easy to find their excrements, or more exactly, their sprains. Sprains is the kind of excrement with the remains of fishes dropped by the otters, and I have about 100 reports, 100 sightings about the white oriki, about 100 sightings. I have only one or two, or maybe two reports of excrements against 100 eyewitnesses sighting. Okay? For the otter, the proportion, the ratio should be exactly the contrary. One should expect 100 reports of sprains, of excrements, and from time to time, and very rarely, the observation of the otter itself. We have otter in France. You have otters in England.
Yes.
But it is very, very rare to see, to watch, to look at an otter. I made field research of otters in southern France, 40 years ago. We found several times sprains, that is to say, the typical excrements of the otters, but never saw them. So they did exist. Well, and as I said, for the white oriki, the proportion between excrements and sighting is exactly the contrary. 100 more times sightings than excrements.
Strange.
For all these reasons and other ones, for the moment, I believe that I rather think that the white oriki is a monotreme, an aquatic monotreme, unknown to science, of course, in New Zealand. But, in the last 40 years, things have changed because monotremes, more or less related to the platypus, has been found, not only fossil monotreme, have been found not only in Australia, but also in Patagonia, in South America, when both continents were made one and the same landmass, the Pangea, many million years ago. And also fossil mammal, native terrestrial mammal, has been found in New Zealand Miocene deposits 20 million years ago, about 20 million years ago, yes. Well, the former presence of native mammals in New Zealand is not an impossibility. Now it is proved that they did exist 20 million years ago, at least.
It's fascinating, and the Wajareki especially. That's that's really
circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, that's really captured my imagination recently, because of the what could it be in New Zealand, and I think your theories about it, what it is, what it could be, are have tweaked my interest tonight, and I'm going to have to do a little research after this again and really look into it. I know you haven't got a lot of time, Michel, but I just wanted to perhaps ask you about one more of the things that you've studied before you go, which is the giant octopus. Now, I'm fascinated stories about giant cephalopods, but I find it hard to justify their size. Do you have any theories? Have you come across any ideas in your research about how they could attain such a gigantic size if they are as big as people report?
Well, yes, I have been very interested in giant cephalopods, and I even published a book, Tentacles, well, for 15 years ago. Well, the most well-known, it's well-known, if I can say, giant cephalopod is the giant squid Architeuthis dux, which has been scientifically described by a Danish Stenstrup in 1857. But the existence of the giant squid had been reported since Pliny the Elder in the 1st century of Christian era. Well, and of course reported in the following centuries, and even drawings or paintings were available in the 17th century of the giant squid Architeuthis. But it was scientifically described only 1 century and a half ago, when the first remains were caught off Bahamas Islands, or Bermuda Islands. This giant squids can be about 10 meters, more than 30 feet long, but there may be more longer specimens, much longer, much larger, or even unknown species. How can we say that? Because huge scars on the body of sperm whales have been reported and photographed, and they suggest that individuals, or maybe unknown species, twice or thrice longer than the longer officially accepted, that is to say 20 or 30 meters long.
Wow.
That is not impossible. Also, in the past 20 years, photographs and videos taken by oceanographic deep sea vehicles have been taken, yes, in various oceans of a kind of large, very large squid, about 20 feet long, a very big fin squid, as it is popularly known. The scientific name is Magnapinidae, the Magnapinids, the family of the squids. Before these photographs, it was only known by very, very small specimen, very small juvenile young specimen. But they can reach, we now know that they can reach at least 20 feet in length. Well, now concerning the existence of octopuses as large or even larger than the giant squid Archaeopteryx, is it possible? Well, in the oceans, all is possible. The ocean is the land of the giants. Whales, of course, but also large fishes like the whale shark or the le requin pèlerin, how do you say? The basking shark. Sorry.
Basking shark, yeah.
So why not octopuses? And for the existence of such a large, very large octopus, the main piece, that is to say, it is a case of saying, the main piece was the huge mass of organic tissue found on the beach of St. Augustine in Florida in 1897.
Yes.
Professor Raynal, a specialist, an expert in giant cephalopods and particularly in giant squids, when he received photographs of the so-called Florida monster, as it was nicknamed, in the first time he thought that it was the remains of a giant octopus with arm, about 100 feet, 30 meters long.
Wow.
And he named it Octopus giganteus, the giant octopus. Why so large? Because of the photographs. On the photographs, you see that it is several meters long. One of the people, the Dr. David Webb, a local surgeon of St. Augustine, who was fond of natural history, he took photographs. He used 4 horses, cables to
drag,
to make a few meters on the beach with the carcass, with the cadaver. He said that the cadaver was several tons in weight, etc. But later, a few days later, this Dr. David Webb sent samples. He cut samples on the cadaver of the Florida monster. He sent them to Dr. Raynal at Yale University, and Raynal changed his opinion. And in fact, he thought that it was simply the remains of the tissue found in the head of the sperm whale.
Okay.
Well, and 70 years later, analysis was made, biochemical, histological, and so on. And there was an endless controversy. Was it the remains of the giant octopus or of a sperm whale. Well, at the end of the past century, I have been associated in DNA analysis on the remaining samples of the
Really?
Florida monster with Dr. Joseph Gennaro Jr., of the formerly of the University of Florida in Miami, and a DNA analysis using the PCR method, which is very now very well known with the COVID coronavirus.
We've all become familiar with the PCR method.
DNA analysis became famous with this terrible coronavirus.
Yes.
Well, but the results of the test made by Gennaro, and I worked with in relation with him from France, were made the results in 2003 were quite astounding, unexpected. Well, 98 or 99% match with Cyprinodon variegatus, the scientific name, from a data bank, database of DNA samples. Cyprinodon variegatus is a very small, very small fish, 2 inches long, 5 centimeters long, living in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, that was completely crazy result, because the photographs and the people of the time, 1 century earlier, said that it was several tons in weight, several meters in length. It couldn't be a very small fish, 2 inches long. Well, only 6 years later, I was able to find a document, in fact, a whole book about 1,000 pages long.
Oh gosh!
All the things bought or received by the Smithsonian Institution in 1896 and 95. And well, I can read sent by Dr. David Webb samples of the Octopus giganteus, yes, photographs of Octopus giganteus, and in the same tank, in the same formaldehyde tank, samples of Cyprinodon variegatus.
Okay.
Were put in the same formaldehyde content, samples of the Florida monsters, and
contaminated the whole thing.
Some little fishes of the Gulf of Mexico. And 1 century later, and this demonstrates the power of this PCR method, we find out DNA not of the monster but of the little fish.
Yeah.
So all the conclusion is that all the biochemical tests made on the Florida samples for a century have been contaminated by this fish. Well, so this, there was one possibility to solve the problem, that a new stranded cadaver looking like the Florida monster occurred nowadays. And this was the case in 2003 just the same year when the DNA test of the Florida monster, and in fact of the little fish, were available. And this time it occurred, the so-called Chilean blob in Chile was found on the coast of southern Chile in 2003 with exactly the same features as the Florida monsters 1 century earlier. The size, enormous size, the pink color of the cadaver, the sort of woolly fringes on the cadaver. It was very hard to cut, even with a scalpel, because it is made of almost pure collagen. The hemispheric shape of the so-called body, the kind of stumps of arms from this from this so-called body, and so on. And this time, the DNA analysis, without contamination, of course, show that this blob from Chile was a rotting sperm whale, more exactly, the part of collagen which is found in the head of the sperm whale. And of course, therefore, the Florida monster is just the same thing, a huge mass of collagen from the head of a sperm whale, and not a giant octopus. And this is closing the case for the giant octopus, at least from the Florida monster, and all the relations which have been made with the so-called giant scuttles or lusca from the Bahamas Highlands, which can be explained by giant squids, and also the water phenomenon in the blue holes, the famous caverns, deep caverns in the sea in the Bahamas, with the very strange water phenomenon of well, and of course the fear of being sunken, either a ship or a sailor or a diver, by these very dangerous currents in the blue holes of the Bahamas. Well, that doesn't seem no. However, I remain. I keep an open mind for the existence of large, very large octopus species, even unknown to science. After all, a very large octopus, again off the New Zealand coast. New Zealand is decidedly very, very fond of cryptids. It was fished by a fish ship of fisheries activity, a very large octopus, Alifron atlanticus, and it might be one of the most large species, as big as the Pacific, the giant Pacific octopus, the Seattle, Washington State, etc., and as big or possibly bigger than this well-known species.
Wow.
And Alifron atlanticus, despite its name, is not only living in the Atlantic Ocean, but also well in the Pacific Ocean. I am sorry, but I have to.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to thank you, Michel, and I didn't want to interrupt because really you were giving such fascinating breakdown of your studies and the facts. And for once, I was very quiet in these interviews, as everybody at home will realize. Michel, just very quickly before you go, can you tell people where they can find your books or you if they want to look at your research?
My book, Tentacule, which is the French word for tentacles, can be found on Amazon,
okay.
Quite simply. And my articles, well, for instance, on Google, search for cetaceans. How do you say in English?
Cetaceans. Cetaceans.
Cetaceans.
It's cetaceans.
Yeah. Cetaceans with two dorsal fins.
Yes.
Cetaceans with two dorsal fins, and you will find my old article 30 years ago on this very strange cryptozoological file. Okay, and it was published in Aquatic Mammals, and the file, the PDF file, the PDF article can be downloaded. Well, if you look at, if you search on Google,
cetaceans, with double fins. I'll put a link to that. I actually have those PDFs. I've downloaded your PDFs and I've read them, and I have them. So I'll put a link for everybody listening in the description so they can find them, and a link to Tentacle as well. And for anybody out there, I think it's definitely a great read. Michel, thank you so much. It's been a bucket list moment, and I've really enjoyed every moment.
It was a pleasure to
thank you so much.
Present my conception of cryptozoology. Awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.